Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about how the globalist machine, if I can use that term generically, is placing subversive activists at all levels of our sort of society in the West. Now, it's not that they haven't been doing it for a while, of course they have, but it's done sort of quite secretively and really without much scrutiny. But now they're becoming sort of more brazen and open about it. And some examples of this would be, say, the Biden administration's nominee, not that Joe Biden's making any decision about anything. The guy is so fucked up. But the activist, the globalists that control him, the activist subversives they're wanting to appoint into the senior levels of the judiciary. Now, given they can't control the Supreme Court of the United States at the moment, something that drives them crazy, by the way, they're really trying to pack the federal courts with activists. So, and I'm talking about super activists, not just people that may have some views on social justice. I'm talking about radical activists that believe the entire white Western society must be brought down and crushed because it's all Nazis. And anything that replaces anything will be better than what's there currently. So we're talking low IQ, angry, bitter, radical, vengeful activists that are being appointed into the federal court and all the other senior courts that they can lay their hands on. And given that the Dems have a majority in the Senate in the US, then they're able to, for nearly all the cases, get their radical judges appointed. So now it's not simply confined to the the judiciary. We're talking about the body politic being infiltrated with these subversives, and particularly in the countries that are designated for civilizational destruction. So Britain, the United States are sort of prime candidates here. The globalists are really putting serious effort into crushing the civilizations there. Britain being sort of the inventor, if you like, of the modern industrial technical world, they're really designated for serious civilizational, absolute sort of, it's genocidal if you look at it in civilizational cultural terms. And huge efforts being put there into crushing British history and British heroes, and the same in the United States, because that's the biggest economy in the world. So the globalists are particularly concerned with crushing both of those as an absolute priority, and other cultures as well. Less so some of the others, but those two in particular. So I'll concentrate on those. Now, let's just have a look at I'm staggered when I look at the judicial nominees to superior courts and federal courts in the United States going through Senate confirmation hearings. And I can't believe the low quality of, I mean, if I was looking for a lawyer and I went into the office of any of those people, met them and spoke to them, there's not a chance, not a snowball's chance, unless they were very, very cheap, snowball's chance, even then, that I would use any of them. That they come across as low IQ, they come across as race grifter hustler, LGBT hustler activists. They're just NGO flunky moron, low IQ, angry, bitter, vengeful activists. That's all they are. There's nothing else. They're not fucking lawyers or judges or anything, in my view. Now, look, I'll just sort of go through one. Now you've got to spend a little bit of time online, but not a vast amount. Within 10 minutes I can put together a history, and it's not hard to look at the cases these people were involved in. And you have to remember as well, now there are so many activist judges around that it's very easy for the globalist cabal, if I can call them that, to marry up the activist lawyer with the activist judge, with the activist prosecutor. So they can all go into the court together as the activist and produce an outcome. And they can usually say, well, look how, when she was a lawyer, she won this landmark, groundbreaking landmark case. But actually she didn't. There was a super activist judge. The other side put up almost no resistance. And it was obviously a prearranged outcome that that they would produce this legal verdict, which would then be used as precedent, and it was a precedent that served beautifully and wonderfully served the globalist cause, and so the whole thing was a prearranged, done deal gig, which again shows you how far the law has fallen and how much the globalists have penetrated and subverted the legal establishments all across the Western world, whether it be in Australia or the United States or Britain or Canada or indeed elsewhere. Now, so here's one of the this is one of the candidates for and she'll get confirmed. Yeah. Now she's from she's got a Pakistani. One of her parents is from Pakistan, and another one is a half black, half Hispanic partner. So she's very brown, and which is fine. Who cares? Yeah. Now she comes in one of the poorest, most crime-ridden neighbourhoods in the United States, and she would have been surrounded by other black and brown people. So I don't know if there wouldn't have been many white people in the neighbourhoods that she was in. So she goes out of high school. Now she's to say the least an ordinary student, but somehow she manages to get into a third tier or fourth tier, really. It's like a community college in effect, to study sociology law. So she comes out of that, and just listening to her, she's in her 30s, by the way. She's somebody she's absolutely simmering with anger. You can see the anger at the world and the anger at the universe, and this burning desire to inflict revenge on those who are on the wrong side of the social justice divide. And also, comes out with a number of, they slip out a bit when you're listening to Marxist phrases, like the reason that the black people in Baltimore don't all have waterfront mansions is because of fucking Nazis that held them back. That's why. And she's gonna address this social justice issue as a judge and an advocate by turning it all on its head and showing those damn white fucking fascist Nazis that they've done wrong and they're going to be punished for it. This. So that sort of flavour comes out of her talking. She's seeking revenge on the world. Now that'd be the last person. If I was the somebody selecting judges or selecting people to stand for, say, Senate approval or anything like that, you would, within seconds, you would talk to somebody and go, "Oh, holy fuck, I'm not putting you anywhere near the courtroom. You're not going to be a judge." Remember, with a stroke of her, if she gets confirmed as a judge, with the stroke of her pen, just the stroke of her pen, she could put people in prison. Now, that's a lot of power to give to people. So you want to know, or certainly I would, you'd want to know this person is utterly impartial, apolitical, with no political affiliations, utterly impartial, and is interested only in the application of the law and appropriate, recognised legal precedents and so on. So this is something that you would consider paramount, and that they have a track record in their lives and any interactions or involvement they've had in the law. They would have this track record of impartiality and independence. Now, if they showed even a whisper, any sort of activism at all, that would, to me, would be a disqualification. And I think to any sensible, sane person, it would be. But nonetheless, let's have a look at this person. Now, she comes out of this fourth tier college with some bullshit half-ass sociology law degree. Now, this is where you can see that she's already been grabbed by the globalist machine. She's already been, okay, we can use this person. And she immediately gains a clerkship as an illegal clerk, with an activist judge in a federal court. Now, you don't get that straight out of some bullshit college. She's got nothing Ivy League about it. Now, maybe she's a gifted student. I certainly doesn't look like it as far as I can tell. And if you look at the intellect, she's not a complete moron. I've seen worse, but she's no genius, and so I don't believe she could have done well in any studies. But she gets a clerkship, and again, not just any judge. It's not like she's just an intern at some the nearest local judge. It's an activist judge, a well-known activist, and she gets a gig there. Bear in mind that she's in her 30s, like she's 38 or something. Now, then she goes straight out of there and is gifted a job with the Federal Department of Justice. Again, you can now see the resume building, the building of the CV. They're giving her that credibility. She hasn't been given a book publishing deal, which is another method, but you can see how they're building it. This is not done on ability. She is going to be one of their subversive elements that they're going to use to bring down Western society. She's already been earmarked for that role. Now, at this same time, while she's with the Federal Department of Justice, she's also involved with activist NGOs, and ones that are at the apex and the forefront and the vanguard of all this activism that all white people are Nazis, all black and brown people are oppressed, and LGBT and that. So she's right in the middle of the screaming placard waving activism, and the NGOs providing free legal services for like the Black Lives Matter type people and so on. She's also given a number of sort of special legal industry awards, so quite prestigious when they were awarded by merit, which they no longer haven't been for some time. So again, you see the resume building, the credibility building. She may be a low IQ, a fucking 2-bit activist, but we're going to build a credibility sort of screen around her, so that when we do put her up for a federal judgeship in the years to come, she's got that sort of credible looking background. But in reality, she doesn't. This is it's all political and so on. And she's gifted a National Achievement Award when she's got no fucking achievements at all. And she's given a very senior, prestigious lawyer gig in a Jewish activist law firm that has, huge government contracts, as in legal services type contracts. She's got quite a reputation for litigating on behalf of non-Christians against Christians, and for litigating on behalf of blacks against whites, and so on. Then she goes straight out of there and is gifted another legal gig in a government department. And she's also been involved in the last few years in legal cases to do with harassing Republicans and ensuring that cases are heard in areas where the globalist Democrats are in total control of the entire legal infrastructure. So she's certainly, she's manifestly and clearly an activist and a servant of the Democrat Party in politicizing and subverting and undermining the rule of law and due legal process. And then now she's been put up to be a fucking federal judge. Now, again, because the globalists don't control the Supreme Court, they're trying to counterbalance that by overstacking the federal courts, to the point where they're going to judges, that are fairly moderate and sort of, focused on the Constitution and the law. They're going to those judges who may be 50 years old, straight white males. They're going to those judges and saying, look, we'll if you resign, then we'll take care of you. You'll be looked after as a service to globalization, and it's worth us giving you a few $1 million to get your waterfront property somewhere. It's worth us giving you a nice, or some nice consulting gig on a few $100,000 a year, and it's worth us doing that just to get you out of that job, out of the federal judge job, so we can put in a radical activist. Because if we can control the federal courts, then we can effectively neutralize anyone that attempts to oppose us and oppose the globalization project. So it's worth doing. It's worth paying. So these people are being paid and looked after and corrupted to retire early, just so they can stick in radical activist judges who will actively subvert and destroy, not only the legal system, but with it Western society. But it goes, now I'm going to sort of move from that to, like the idea is with all this is to destroy all the systems of the West, or everything that's made the West a great place to live, that's made it rich, that's made it prosperous, that's made it stable, and so on. All these things had to be removed because they get in the way of the globalist project. So they just want to make sure there's no resistance to the globalist project, and to ensure that all confidence is lost in the system by everybody, so that nobody's going to fight for it or support it or uphold it. I mean, why would you? Because it's so corrupt and ramshackle and broken down. And that's so even if they don't get exactly what they want from a legal or legislative point of view, they still get the destruction of the system and the loss of confidence in it, which is like the second prize. Now let's move to Britain here. Now he's a supposedly right-wing politician, and he's a staunch supporter of mass immigration, and of he's a heroic, hairy-chested fighter of anti-Semitism. Oh, he's so tough, so fucking tough. What a tough guy. Whoa. Fighting this anti-Semitism because there are Nazis everywhere, and he's fighting the Nazis because the anti-Semitism. Now, he's also married to an activist, a Jewish lady who's an activist, and a very strident activist, by the way. And if you look at her, it's not hard. It only takes a few minutes. If you look at her view, is that mass migration must be allowed because the reason the Holocaust occurred, and a lot of Jews hold this view, the reason the Holocaust, in their view, in their sort of attitude or view of things, occurred is because there was no mass migration in the world. The Jews just couldn't decide to get up and leave Europe and go somewhere else. And if they had been allowed to do that, there would have been no Holocaust, is the argument. Now, I think that's a very flawed take on history, but let's run with that for a moment. So the Jews think that if any restriction on mass immigration, any restriction at all, any restriction, is a direct route or path to the Holocaust. They see the two as effectively the same thing. So now if you restrict people, immigration, on the basis of skills or language or any religion or any reason at all, then they see that not as a sensible, prudent, sound economics, sound social type integration. They don't, stable society. They don't see it as that. They see that as a direct attack on Jews. Now, so the mass immigration isn't allowed, and because they would be among the potential mass immigrants, then you're directly attacking them. So you may say you're just talking about making sure skilled immigration, but they see it as being a barrier to the Jews needing to move. Now, they've got an attitude of history which isn't out of place necessarily, but they believe that at any time, anywhere, any moment, any tick of the clock, they will be persecuted somewhere in the world or multiple places or whatever. And so they need that capacity to be able to move at any time they choose, at any tick of the clock. Anything that restricts that in the slightest possible way is Hitler. So that's the connection in their minds that they make. So mass immigration, as they see it, is sure, it's open slather, but it means they can move anytime they want to, and that's the primary. But the fact that they're hiding in amongst the brown and the black peasants from the third world, that's a secondary issue. That Western countries, that's your problem, not ours. We just want that capacity to move at any time. So this we're fighting Nazis, we're fighting anti-Semitism, is very much tied in with this Jewish worldview. So here's this guy. This is in England or Britain. So he's married to this strident Jewish activist who's got some really strident activist views that mass immigration must be allowed. Anyone that questions it or complains about it is Hitler, and so on. Now he, unsurprisingly or whatever, because he can't be very independently minded, he magically holds these views as well. Now here's how they create a subversive. So this guy grows up in an area where there's no Jewish diaspora, none. So in the schools and so on that he was involved in, I doubt he'd have met a single Jewish person ever. But somehow he gets involved in the NGO movement, and he doesn't seem the sort of guy that would have got involved in it. He doesn't come from a background that would suggest that sort of activism would have been easily accessible, or that it would have been attractive to him. I mean, he seems like a bit of a wimp, but that doesn't necessarily mean that. Maybe because he's such a wimpy guy, made him feel tough to run around and wave placards or something. I don't know. I mean, maybe he met some hot Jewish chick. Who knows? But he wasn't in the right sort of place, or area, or circumstances to be attracted into the NGO activism thing, sort of in the end of senior high school and into college. Now, suddenly things change quite radically for him. He's not a good student or anything, but suddenly he wins an international scholarship that's to study political science abroad. And this scholarship, wouldn't you know it, is a Jewish organization so somehow they're picking him out, and he's a white guy, picking him out for special attention, giving him this scholarship so he can study. I don't think his family had the means to subsidize this on their own, nor probably would he have done it if he hadn't had the scholarship land on it. So this quite ordinary, in fact, I'd say subordinary student is for some reason singled out for a scholarship. Again, it's to study political science, and it's to study at an overseas university that's a hotbed of activism and NGO activism and so on. So he's really brought into the main beltway of the activist, the globalist activist sort of system at this time, and gets his political science degree, which is really an indoctrination degree. I don't know if the guy fucking learned anything there. Why would this Jewish group give him that? Which wouldn't have been cheap, by the way. They'd have had to stump up easily $100,000+ US. And why would they specially single out this ordinary student from Britain to do that? I don't quite get that. But when you look at his future sort of career path, then you start to see how it's all working. So now this sort of over the next several years, 6 years, I guess, he acquires a very substantial property portfolio that his income in no way could have afforded, not even close, couldn't even come close. So he acquires this substantial property and share portfolio. He marries this Jewish activist, which can't be an accident, for goodness sakes. So she also acquires a substantial property portfolio. So they're being looked after here, quite clearly. He's not, he's not backward in coming forward about his support for the Jewish jihad, that mass migration must be allowed, that anyone opposed it is Hitler, and that's he's quite on board with all that, and puts out plenty of propaganda to support it. And again, by the age of 30, he's got this very substantial property portfolio, which is many times beyond his income to be able to afford. So that's rather suspicious, and you'd think that would be something that would be examined in detail. But for some reason it isn't. It's been, some folks have tried to refer it to investigative committees, but no one really wants to touch it for some strange reason. And then he gets jobs he gets given a gig in Parliament. He's parachuted into a very safe seat, which someone without his political credential, with his political or non-credentials, they wouldn't give someone like that a safe seat again, unless there were powerful interests that were demanding it. So he gets a safe seat, so he doesn't have to worry about campaigning or anything like that. Then shortly afterwards, he's given a ministerial position, like a senior position in the government, and looking after a committee that's to approve various projects that are being subsidised heavily by the taxpayer, which they're being performed by front companies that are fronting for some of these super activist NGOs, and he approves all these. Again, you'd think alarm bells would go off everywhere. There'd be investigative committees. There'd be all sorts of things. You know, I don't know, maybe fraud squad investigations, but nothing. No one touches him. He's just so. And then he ends up being in charge of wouldn't you know it, in charge of promoting mass immigration. Now you know, if that's not sus, I don't know what is. But this just shows you how they're doing it and how it works and how brazen they are in this. You've been attached to Australia, your pushback channel. Thank you for listening.